Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? The answer is Deals. This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On this show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, franchising, and more. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. Sara Mostafa is a seasoned attorney with over 2 decades of experience representing private companies and individuals across a wide range of transactional matters. Her practice encompasses contract negotiation, entity formation, corporate governance, mergers and acquisitions, private equity transactions, financing transactions, employment matters, real estate transactions, and providing outside general counsel services. She's represented companies across industries from technology and wealth management, retail, entertainment, wholesale, construction, restaurants, medical practices, marketing, and fitness and nutrition, and many others. And, she's got a big law background like I do. And the exciting part is that one of the reasons I'm having her on, we usually don't have other attorneys that do what we do, but why is she on? Because she's our new partner here at Kupfer. So we're so excited to have Sara coming aboard, and I want to introduce you all to her in the audience here. Sara, welcome to the DealQuest Podcast.
Thanks, Corey. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, listen, folks, so we're going to get into Sara's background, her experience, and also, just her view on what's going on in the corporate deal and M&A and, private equity and whatever else we end up talking about. Listeners know I don't script this podcast, so we'll see what we're talking about. But Sara, before we get to all of that experience and what you see is, going on in the marketplace, et cetera, I want to ask you, when you were growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old, what did you want to be? Because, maybe it wasn't a corporate and transactional lawyer. You tell me.
Absolutely not, Corey. It was most certainly not. So I wanted to be a fashion designer. I would sit with my sketch pad and draw designs all the time. I had an aunt, actually, one of my dad's sisters was a fashion designer, and she inspired me to want to do that. And so I never really had law on the mind until way later on. Actually, it kind of fell in my lap. I was graduating. I was at UPenn for college. And I got a call from my dad that I had completed both of my major requirements and my general requirements as a junior. And I didn't realize I was going to be graduating. And he's like, you know what, you're done. And so get a job. And so I was a junior, graduated. And the first job I could find in Philadelphia, which is where I wanted to stay because all my friends were still staying on for senior year, was at a law firm, Drinker, Biddle and Reith, a really large regional firm. And so I was a paralegal there for a couple years, and that's what inspired me to go to law school.
Wow. But, you haven't totally abandoned your fashion design dreams, right?
I haven't. It's interesting. Just last September, I bought a sewing machine, and it's my passion. I spend a lot of my free time designing clothes and making clothes. I'm exhibiting some garments at the San Diego County Fair this year. So it's definitely, you can definitely do both. You don't have to give up on your other dreams and desires being a corporate attorney.
And as at least some of our listeners, certainly our clients and colleagues or whatever know, we are not like, I've had other businesses, speaking business, I've had real estate investment funds. Brian Megan, our other partner, runs a separate company as well that provides administrative, paralegal, and bookkeeping services to about 70 law firms. So we're an entrepreneurial firm, and we don't mind that people have other, in fact, we encourage people to have other passions. And so I'm glad that Sara does that still because I'm sure that, listen, we all love doing the corporate deal work, but it doesn't mean that it fulfills every part of our soul and interest.
Right. For sure.
So Sarah, one other question looking back. What was the first deal of any type you were involved in? Maybe it was when you were a young lawyer, maybe it was something before that. What was the first deal that you can remember you were involved in some way?
My first deal I remember as a young lawyer was when I was with Cooley. Starting out, that was my first firm where I worked in the San Diego office. And I remember working on an M&A transaction for a biotech company client. And another junior associate and I were sent to the offices of this client to spend days upon days digging through boxes to do due diligence. This was well before virtual data rooms. And so I just that memory always sticks with me, just, digging and digging through boxes and boxes of files. How things have changed, Corey.
Totally. I mean, listen, the younger attorneys these days, they don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to sound like, Sarah's got 20 years in, I've got 20 years on her on top of that, right? I don't want to sound like the old guy back in my day. It was whatever. But you don't forget those experiences. For me, it was like an unair-conditioned warehouse that was filled with physical files that we had to go through for due diligence on a deal. Like literally, I was there for weeks, maybe a week and a half. Yeah, now everything's uploaded to a digital data room, and it's all nice and
A
clean.
lot easier these days.
Well, so it's the other early experience that I remember, which is different now, is that before digital printing, you used to literally go when you were doing a public offering deal, like, when a company was going public with securities, either an initial or secondary offering, you would literally go to a financial printer and you would sit at the financial printer and wait for pages to come out of the prospectus to proofread them and change them and whatever and go back and forth. Now, of course, that's
Yeah.
long gone.
Those printer experiences were formative for me. That's what really sealed the deal for me, that I didn't want to really stay at a large firm. Or the many nights spent at financial printers waiting for documents to come through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's, it was the kind of thing where the first few times, you're in your 20s or whatever it is, and the first few times, maybe you're flying somewhere. And like for me, I didn't fly as a kid. My first flight ever was in law school. I made up for it since then, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I came from a little middle-class family and my parents flew on their honeymoon and that was about it, and, until much later. But, so in the beginning it was cool. I'd fly to Atlanta, I'd fly to Dallas, you'd be at the printers, they can get you anything, any kind of like you
Yes.
want. Bring me lobster, bring me filet mignon,
Right?
right? And it was exciting and cool, but I'll tell you, it went from exciting to cool to
Yeah.
not that much fun. Not,
Yeah, a few times in, it's like, "Bring me a hotel room where I can sleep for 8 hours."
yeah, exactly, exactly. So Sarah, what had you, so you were paralegal, right? And
Yeah.
you moved to being a lawyer as opposed to your early, at least, although we know you didn't give it up, but your fashion designer dreams as the primary thing you did. What had you be attracted to corporate deal work? Because you've been pretty much doing that stuff since
Yeah,
the
since the
beginning, right?
beginning. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the situations where really when you get out of law school, especially if you are moving to a large firm, you have a choice, litigation or business transactions. And for me, I had no interest whatsoever in litigation. It just not my personality to want to be in combat all the time. And so transactional work just appealed a lot more to me. And then since then, it's something that I actually quite love and enjoy because I work with so many, people who really, I'm helping them from the time of conception of an idea all the way through, making that dream come to fruition and exiting at some point in the future. And so staying with a client for their whole life cycle of their business and growing with them and getting to know them and seeing them, hopefully succeed, it's very fulfilling. And so I actually love it. And I love the variety of the work as well.
Yeah. So listen, folks, for anybody who knows us, which is a chunk of our listeners, that I've given that same answer. Brian's given that same answer, like, the ability to help people work with them through their life cycle, help them realize their dreams, help them monetize and exit, and the variety of things that so maybe it's no mystery on why Sarah was a great fit to come into firm here. So let's talk about, obviously your bio talked about, all the different industries that you've had clients in, and folks, I think, know that we do deals across industries. I mean, you name an industry, I've probably done a deal in it. We do a lot in wealth management, but it's not all we do. And maybe there are some people out there with the misimpression that it's all we do. It's not. It's definitely the biggest chunk. but we represent clients across industries. What I know for me, and you sort of alluded to this, but one of the things I love is actually learning about different businesses, right? And
Yes.
different industries and sort of the behind the scenes stuff and that. And, so much of what we do isn't industry specific. It's funny, sometimes you'll get somebody who says, do you have experience representing, a vitamin company who exports, vitamins to China? And it's like, well, okay. The truth is most of what they need, whether it's their,
Right.
operating agreements, general contracts, things like that. Yes. Do we not handle the export? Like if they need a lawyer that works on the export part, but we have relationships that we bring them in. So most of it is common unless you have like, for example, in wealth management, it's a highly regulated area. So you do want, like experience there. It's the same reason why we don't do, on the flip side, we don't do, for example, a lot of healthcare stuff. Like we'll get involved with healthcare deals, but we'll always bring in a healthcare expert because that's a regulated area that at least I don't have a lot of experience in. But the point is that the variety is interesting. So is it the same for you? Like I sort of geek out on like when I get into a new industry and I figure out the business model and,
I
how it
absolutely love
works.
it. I mean, it's really, I know like you said, I mean, I have clients from basically every industry, restaurants. I have some, fitness centers. I've had a Miss America contestant client, which was very interesting, and some other entertainer type clients, contractors. It really, it runs the gamut, and it is super interesting because, like you said, the deal work is quite similar regardless of industry, but just learning the ins and outs about the industry makes the work varied enough to be interesting, and I love to learn. So it's always you always go in and you're always learning something new when it's a different industry from what you're normally accustomed to working with.
And what are you seeing? I mean, listen, I know, we are all very busy in the firm, which is great. You came in and joined us, and it literally hit the ground right. It was like, okay, Sarah's at Kupfer now, and she's on a treadmill. It's like she's sprinting. There was no
Exactly.
there was no, warm-up period. There was no
Not at all.
easing in period. And that's in part because, you had a client base that you were able to bring, clients who followed you. So, talk to us a little bit. I mean, obviously not about any specific deal, but what are you seeing in the industry right now? Do you feel like the deal market is as robust as it seems in our little microcosm, of deals we do generally? Are there any particular industries that seem to be interesting right now?
So yes, in terms of our microcosm, I mean, the deals have never slowed down, not even in light of what's going on in the world and the macroeconomics and the situation. I mean, I feel like that has not slowed things down, at least yet at all. It's been extremely busy, and things continue to pick up actually. In terms of what am I seeing? I'm seeing a lot of AI type, transactions that's dominating the California market out here for sure. California is always, a leader for M&A activity, and a lot of that is as a result of the AI businesses, especially up in Northern California and Silicon Valley. And so certainly AI is such a huge part of everything right now going on in M&A. You can get, if you've been able to integrate AI into your business model, you're able to get significantly higher valuations. And so, that's one trend I'm definitely have been seeing for the last couple of years is the impact of AI in general on the M&A market.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I saw an interview recently with Mark Cuban, who obviously is unbelievably successful. Doesn't mean he's right about everything, but his view was that a lot of these AI companies, he especially had some issues with the whole Chat GPT thing, whatever. Not in terms of the like trillions of dollars that are investing, and he was like, "No way, this is going to pay off." He was a little more bullish on like on Google's. AI because they obviously have a foundation. I'm not asking you to comment on that particularly, but what's always interesting when something is hot, and you and I have been practicing long enough that we've seen other cycles, right, where
Yeah.
things get super hot. I mean, I was practicing, you weren't necessarily in the internet boom and bust around 2000, right?
Right.
So it's always interesting. But what's interesting for us is that, yes, so there are a lot of deals done when things are hot, like in AI, but then we talk sometimes as well that just because, let's say there's an AI bubble bust. I'm not predicting that. I'm not saying there will be. There certainly will be
Yeah.
winners and losers. Obviously, I think the pace of investment, like it's going to shake out, right? That's what happens with any new technology, right? People get hot. It's not necessarily the first movers that end up winning. If you look at search, for example, Google was not the first, search company. Even when things get tough, there's other deal opportunities. They just look different, right?
They look different. And we saw that with COVID. When COVID happened, everybody was concerned that deals would stop completely, and that's not what happened.
Right.
Just new types of businesses developed as a result of new consumer needs, basically, when everybody was, stuck at home for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then, of course, things also continued to be strong. I remember COVID didn't have any impact on deals, also as a large result of the fact that many businesses were able to get government subsidies through PPP loans and, ERC loans as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think there are some times when folks who aren't as experienced in the deal world make assumptions on what's going to. I mean, listen, if you said to a lot of people, even people in the industry who said, there's going to be war, there's going to be, inflation's not necessarily going to keep coming down, there's going to be other disruptions, you have tariffs, you have a bunch of stuff that's going on that might logically, you would think might keep money on the sideline or might make people wait and be hesitant. And I'm not saying that listen, whenever we talk about the deal market, there's no one deal market, right? Different industries are affected differently. But overall, like you said earlier, Sarah, right? I mean, despite these, things, deals get done, right?
They do. Yeah. I mean, the only time I'd say, I recall a slowdown would have been the Great Recession in 2008, 2 years after I started my career.
Oh, yeah.
There was certainly a slowdown at that point.
Yeah, that was tough. I mean, literally, I talk about this in my Authentic Negotiating book, and I've talked about this, on stage. I mean, frankly, my business ran into trouble back then because our revenues went down 30, 40, 50, 60 grand a month suddenly because no deals were getting done. And at that time, there wasn't government help, right, to bridge the gap for folks. And the deal market did dry up for a while. But, that's an extreme situation. And,
Right.
As far as, it was a great business lesson for me because I built definitely more resiliency and
Exactly.
a lot of companies did do that. Yeah, it was interesting because I was, it also raises, there's always the opportunity for distress deals. I was interviewed recently. I'm assuming it'll, you never know when you're interviewed, but the reporter from Bloomberg said, they was definitely include some of my quotes. So the article will probably be out by the time this airs. As we're recording this, we're a few days out from when Spirit Airlines
Right.
went under, and right in anticipation of that, I was interviewed about, what happens when somebody goes under and what do distressed deals look like and what's likely to happen. Have you been involved in deals over the years where in more distressed industries where things are challenging and that creates opportunities for those who are more funded or whatever? Or have you just been on this good run because of the time you've been doing it?
I haven't experienced that, but talking about resiliency and having the ability to pivot and find other opportunities, regardless of the circumstances around you, I think that that has marked my career. Because, like I said, 2 years into my career was the Great Recession. Everything slowed down, and what I ended up doing is I picked up and moved to Hawaii, and I'm actually licensed to practice law in Hawaii as well, and I continue to keep that license active. But I pivoted, and for a short period of time, I was doing some immigration law because that never really slowed down, especially for investors and whatnot. And then I did also some work at a nonprofit domestic violence agency that I quite loved. I quite enjoyed that opportunity. So there's always an opportunity to pivot.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously you came back in, and for the last, 15 years,
for almost, for the last 18-ish years,
Yeah.
I've been doing just business transactions.
Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to coreycupfer.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. So in terms of, are there any particular industries where you're seeing, outside of AI, where you're seeing, or any just recent interesting deals, again, without any action? Yeah.
like I said, I mean, I have so many varied clients in different industries, and I feel as though all of at least the industries I've dealt with have stayed strong in the deal market. I feel like there hasn't really been a slowdown of activity of any sort. And so I don't want to talk too much about current deals that
Yeah, sure.
I'm working on.
What industries though, like it doesn't have to be like what we're doing right now, but like, over the
Yeah.
last year or two, like what are some of the industries that you're seeing activity in?
Certainly contractors and also dental practices. I feel that dental practices, some for whatever reason, their multiples are through the roof right now.
Yeah.
And what else? I'd say medical in general. I'm seeing some crazy multiples. Certainly, any industry as well that has been successful in integrating AI into their operations. I'm seeing those valuations are skyrocketing, which is incentivizing a lot of business owners who probably would not have otherwise been seeking to exit at this point to consider it.
Yeah.
So I've seen that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously in the wealth management space, we've seen that not necessarily because of AI, but because of PE coming in and the multiples going up so much. We have clients that, just a year or two ago told me that, they got a 5 to 10 year runway left. And then next thing I know, I get a call and they're like, hey, Corey, we got an offer, or can you introduce me to a banker, or what should we do? I think we want to put ourselves in the market because, when valuations, 3 times what they were 7 years ago, it just becomes almost, too tempting to take some chips off the table, at least, even if it's not a full sale. There's, one of the other things we do is a lot of these minority investment deals where people are selling off at least a piece of what they own. Let's actually talk about, let's get a little more deep, because one of the things like on these minority investment deals, right, they sound great. In some ways they are, right? You get capital, take some chips off the table, you get to hedge, right? So maybe you don't sell 100% of your company, but you sell 20% or 30% or 40% of these high multiples. But there are sometimes people don't realize what kind of restrictions and commitments come with even,
Right.
some people think, oh, I still own a majority of it, I control everything. What's the truth on what happens to
Yeah.
minority investment deals?
I mean, really, in those circumstances, you're entering a marriage with somebody, and it's as if you're entering the marriage with a prenup, with a lot of a lot of obligations on your part. I mean, you're used to operating your business independently, making decisions independently, and now you essentially have to get consent to make almost any quote unquote material decision, which really, the scope of materiality when you have an investor is quite wide. So, general day-to-day decisions sometimes are things you have to receive consent in order to make, which, a lot of business owners are not used to. And so, yeah, it really changes the nature of your practice, your business when you bring in an investor. And there's upside as well, of course, but there are a lot of considerations you have to make it in that context. Not only that, the other thing that I see often is that the investor is going to want out after a few years. They're not going to want to stay in this marriage for a long time. So they're going in knowing they're going to get divorced. And so you have to be willing to take the risk that if your business isn't growing the way it was anticipated to grow, that you may have to buy the investor out at, some predetermined amount that might beyond what your company can handle, or also have to liquidate. And so you have to be willing to assume that risk.
It's a fascinating thing because, even on some of the deals where the investor gets less involved in the day-to-day decisions, they're at least going to have, any taking on debt, selling the company, merging, going above a budget. Like sometimes they'll give you leeway to operate within an agreed upon budget, right, on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
But even,
Yeah.
and even with that, that's only true as long as you're hitting your numbers, right?
Right,
When you
exactly.
when you stop hitting your numbers, right? We had this conversation recently on a deal. Again, I won't give a lot of specifics because it's active, but that Sarah and I and Brian are working on, where a client's going to bring in a PE investor. It's a deal that's clearly structured where there's a huge amount of upside if they hit the growth targets. And though there's a huge amount of protection to the investor, meaning priority returns, all this kind of stuff, whatever, that could make this a really, really bad deal, right? If they don't hit the growth protections, right? So they've traded off. And, we had a conversation with the client and they're very sophisticated. They have very high growth. They're very confident already. So they're not sort of depending upon, oh, we don't know how to grow and we're suddenly going to get money. We're going to learn how to grow, right? They're already growing at huge rates, which is unusual, the rates they're growing at already. And they're sophisticated and they made a conscious decision to take some risk on the downside to get a lot more upside because they're really confident that they're going to make it. And, it sort of raises this thing where in terms of our role as attorneys, right? Like one of the things that I think our industry does poorly sometimes, Sarah, right, is that like it would have been easy for us to only focus on the risk using this deal I just
Right.
talked about as an example. There's a lot of downside in this deal. And if that's the only thing we focused on, and lawyers, frankly, are so, risk focused, and we're trained to be risk focused, and a lot of them,
Yeah.
my personality is ready. My joke is that in law school, you don't read cases about anything that went well because there are no cases. The only thing that goes to court is when things went bad, right? So you're over indexed on risk, and identifying risk and making sure the client's taking no risk is important, but also understanding that business people aren't successful without taking risks, and if as long as they take an owning risk, then there's upside, right? Have you found, whether it's with colleagues or certainly folks on the other side, what is your view on how you balance the risk versus upside conversation with clients as an attorney?
Well,
Where part of our job is to identify.
right, exactly. But you can't just like you're saying, I mean, you can't lose the forest for the trees. You have to see the bigger picture. You have to make an assessment as, you have to, of course, lay out these are the risks, but what's the likelihood of these risks coming to fruition? And is it worth it? Is the upside worth it? And so I think that comes with experience. I've definitely noticed the attorneys that are more tenured are able to see that, more readily than a junior attorney who's coming out,
Yeah.
guns blazing and just, trying to attention heavily redline documents to eliminate any basically notion of risk, without kind of seeing, looking for the bigger picture and having a discussion with the client and making risk assessments and seeing what the client's risk tolerance is.
Love that. So yeah, let's delve into it a little bit more in terms of the attorney's role, and how you see it, not only on the risk conversation, but there are certainly clients out there that get frustrated with attorneys, right? The view on the bad side, and listen, unfortunately, it's true for some. That attorneys are deal killers, whatever, and then it's become this thing where every attorney says, "Oh, I'm a deal maker," right? I'm a deal, because it's
Yeah.
counteracting that negative. But frankly, some are and some aren't. Like, so
Yeah.
what are some of the other things that, to really be a deal making attorney, which means in my mind that you get the deals that should be done. Like it doesn't like, you're not going to artificially kill a deal. Obviously, you can identify things in due diligence or whatever if they're a problem.
Right.
Maybe a deal doesn't happen. But like, what does it mean for an attorney to really be a deal maker and truly to help clients, get the right deals done?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you have to avoid the over lawyering aspect. It goes back to what we were just talking about. You have to have some sort of business mindedness. Of course, you're an attorney, but you have to have some business mindedness as well, and try to keep grasp of the bigger picture. And then there's always room to negotiate, and this again comes with experience. There are terms that are really, a lot of times a client or the other side will say is a non-starter, but there's always room to negotiate that term to something that is acceptable to both sides. And I think having the mindset of how can we meet in the middle or at a place where both parties are willing to move forward, and having that mindset is extremely important in a deal.
Yeah, and listen, if, as attorneys, if you truly, really, I think it's an art, right? Of being a great deal maker. I think it's why we've, whether it's the firm in general, probably when Sarah came in, and Sarah herself, as she's have had the gift of having loyal clients, over the years, because clients super appreciate when you can have that understanding, right? That not all lawyers do. So that's great. Sarah, what anything you're particularly excited about, coming up, in terms of, again, not particular things, but what are you excited about right now?
Well, I mean, I'm excited to be with you and Brian, Corey, and the whole team. I'm really loving being at your firm, and it's been a great experience so far. Everybody's so wonderful to work with, and the clients are great. And I've loved integrating the clients I brought over into the firm, and it's just been a really exciting time. It's been really, a lot. Like you said, I hit the ground running, but it's been a good experience. That's what I'm excited for. On the business side of things, but on the personal side of things, I'm about to go to Italy with my kids. And I am very excited for that as well.
Well, that's great. I,
Yeah.
I didn't ask that question to prompt. We're super excited to have you, folks. I mean, I think most listeners, certainly the folks who are our clients and our close colleagues who listen to the podcast, know that we've worked with clients all over the country for years. But it is nice to bring in. I mean, Sarah has a strong presence here in California. We have a lot of California clients. She's admitted to practice in California and Hawaii. I mean, I wouldn't mind.
Right.
But if if you need somebody to do due diligence in a warehouse, maybe in Hawaii, maybe I'd even do it myself. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. So, yeah, I mean, it's great to have, folks know that I spend a chunk of my time here in California, but I'm a New York attorney. So it's great to, to add that not only and have somebody who, has, years of, decades of experience out here. So yeah, we're excited about that too. And listen, frankly, our thing at the firm has been, hey, building capacity because fortunately we have more business opportunities that come to us than we've been able to handle. And I've never been somebody who's going to take on anything that we can't, do well and turn. So bringing in Sarah and also a few months before Sarah came in, we brought in Olivia Carrera, who is an associate helping out on the labor and employment side as well, with the breakaway brokers and all the roadmaps we do and the helping people get out of the wirehouses and banks and insurance companies and that kind of stuff. And then also just doing general employment work. So we've been fortunate to expand the capacity of the firm, which allows us to serve more amazing clients like some of you listeners. So we're excited about that as well. Sarah, is there anything else just in general? Maybe it's not even, we've been talking a lot about deals because this is a deals podcast and, you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time doing that. But you also, do other work for clients like we do, whether that's, we talked about from startup through exit, right?
Right.
So, delve into a little bit more, the other stuff that you're doing in terms of
Yeah.
helping companies start up, structuring, that kind of stuff.
So I know I really am, I'm a go-to attorney for clients in all things business transactions. I have significant experience with commercial leases and your real property purchase agreements and employment matters, and so all types of commercial contracts. So I really do a bit of everything from inception, from entity selection to formation to buy, sells, and operating agreements to all types of commercial contracts, vendor contracts, customer contracts, employment agreements, separation agreements. It runs the gamut. Leases. I basically do a bit of everything. I don't necessarily like the term generalist, but I do a bit of everything in the transactional world, which has been for me wonderful because my work is very varied and I get to know intricate aspects of my clients' businesses. And for the clients, it's wonderful because I'm really their go-to. I mean, anything that I can't handle, of course, we have a large referral base. I can hand off that work to somebody else, but I can handle quite a bit in the transactional realm, and clients really like to have somebody they can go to for most things. And so, I mean, really from inception to exit, I handle all of it.
Yeah, I mean, that outside general counsel role that I've played, that you've played, that Brian's played, for his clients is useful. And our goal, and it's one of the many reasons our philosophies and experience aligned, is to be like, again, not the thing I used to say is I want our, entrepreneurial and corporate company clients to be able to, like, if they have a legal issue, I want them to call me. Now, what they know is that we handle the corporate and deal and, real estate and employment related stuff. Like we don't handle a million other things, right? Criminal, landlord, tenant, personal injury, whatever. But the truth is, I want to be a resource, right? So, I would say, your kid gets busted for pot, like you don't know who to call me. We don't do that. We don't go anywhere near that, but I probably know somebody who can, like we've got amazing, between the entrepreneurs organization attorneys group. Brian's a member of IF Global, which is an international, group of lawyers, and just the experience that me and Brian and Sarah have, in the decades of, of practice and how many people we've known and how many deals we've done, whether that's domestically or internationally, other states, et cetera. There's not a 100% guarantee we know somebody, but there's a pretty high likelihood, we can get you a good referral, even if it's outside our practice area. That's the goal. We want to, I mean, it's overused to say be that trusted resource or whatever, but one of the things I love about you when we spoke, because obviously, listen, we knew we needed additional capacity. I mean, these days you just put it out there. We got hundreds of resumes. We narrowed it down, whatever. And Sarah was the clear choice. One of the things I loved about you was this just sort of passion and enthusiasm, right? You have not just like what we talked about earlier about, different businesses and the variety and whatever, but just be that resource for clients, right? That trusted resource for clients. I guess, what I want to, let's get a little like deep, like what does it mean to you that clients trust and rely upon you in that way?
And really, it's everything. It's what makes me continue to be an attorney despite, a lot of long nights and a lot of stress on occasion. It's just being able to be that source of comfort to a large extent. And it's not always because you're saying what they want to hear. Sometimes you're telling them what, they really don't want to hear, but it helps them in making decisions. But just being that source of knowledge and expertise and comfort to some extent when somebody needs you. And we are service providers. I think a lot of attorneys don't necessarily remember that. There's a lot of getting stuck in the technicalities of the job. We're service professionals. For me, a client calls me, I want to, ask about their wife and kids and know them on a personal level in order to provide them the best service I can on a professional level. And so, just having, I give my cell phone number for better or worse to basically everybody, and being ready and available to answer questions and to guide someone in the right direction just gives me a lot of personal fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah, me as well. It's just, and when I see, one of the stories that I've told a number of times in this podcast is, but particular situation, but it's happened more than once. You talked about that startup through exit, and when really you have a client you've had for that full cycle, right? And that cycle could be 5 years, it could be 20 years, right? Where you've helped them start up, you've helped them grow, you've done their contracts, you've dealt with when they have an employee issue, maybe you've done deals for them where they've done acquisitions or joint ventures or strategic alliances or licensing or whatever it is, done the leases, whatever it is. And now, it's time for them to monetize and exit. For me, yeah, it's not just like there is satisfaction in having them help them achieve that and go all the way on that journey. But it's also like I'm the same way. Like if we've had a decade-long relationship,
Yeah.
I've probably heard about their kids from T-ball to college or whatever it is.
Right.
It's like, and I know like the impact that their success has had on their families, and hopefully, and I know this is important to you as well, and there's another thing that connected us, hopefully they're also, and many of them are, doing things positive for their community, right? With
Right.
organizations they support, using their success to make a difference in things they care about.
Absolutely. And you're just what you were talking about. It is a bit bittersweet after many, many years of a relationship when they do go to sell. It's super exciting for everybody, but there's a little bit of that bittersweet feeling when, this client's now exiting, they're retiring, they're moving on to bigger and better things. But, if you haven't developed that personal relationship the way I like to, then, you've kind of lost a friend of the last 5 to 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I keep the relationship going. It's not all about business. I mean, that's what we do. We're attorneys, but we're human beings primarily. And building those relationships is what life is about.
Yeah, yeah, no question about it, that bittersweet feeling. And listen,
Yeah.
with entrepreneurs, some percentage of them are gonna be calling you for that next business that they're starting because they might be
Right.
selling this one, but they may not be done. Or maybe they're
Absolutely.
gonna become an angel investor and call you about, these 5 companies that they want to invest in. So their business relationship doesn't necessarily end. But yeah, but either way, like, especially, there are some clients where maybe I've been working with them, or you've been working with them for a decade or 2, and they call you occasionally and they have this and that. But then there are some clients that it's like every month, you've talked to them for a decade,
That's
right?
true.
Yeah. And,
Yeah. You know
and
what
that
I find
frequency.
actually? What I find, Corey, is a lot of these business owners who exit, I'm getting calls from their children
Yeah.
thereafter, which is wonderful. I mean, it's a situation where, if the child didn't succeed to the business itself, they have their own entrepreneurial spirit and they're seeking ventures as well. And so it's the next generation that I end up supporting quite often, actually.
There are a few things that I always say sort of in business are the ultimate compliment, right? One is if the original generation is comfortable and confident and trusting and connected enough to recommend you to their kids, and then the kids actually use you, right? As
Right.
opposed, right? And then the other one I talk about, and this has happened more than I would have ever thought, where you actually get referred in by somebody who was on the other side of the table from you on a
Yes.
prior deal, right? Because maybe they're conflicted if it's a lawyer, or maybe we've even had folks that were the clients on the other side. Like we represent a seller and they're the buyer, or the buyer the seller. Then they come in later and they say, "Hey, something's happened. Can you represent us? Which you got to deal with conflict is, or we'd like to refer you, to somebody. So definitely getting into the next generation is one of those things on my ultimate compliment list.
Right, for sure. And like you said, it's a great compliment when opposing counsel refers you to the next deal. And I find that going back to our conversation about deal makers, I find that happens when an attorney recognizes another deal maker and another lawyer, then they'll refer you because they see that the deal went fluidly and as it was supposed to. And so you recognize other deal makers and you appreciate them.
Yeah, no, totally. So Sarah, listen, you and I can talk deals forever, and I expect that we will off this podcast because as partners, we talk deals, right? And corporate work and helping clients grow all the time. But for the purpose of this podcast, we've got to bring it to an end. So listen, folks, we usually have our guests give their, contact information where they can be reached. She can be reached at the firm, right, at Kupfer. It's smostafa@kupferlaw.com is the email. And so definitely reach out to Sarah. Sarah, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom from oppression for people around the world to why I've been an entrepreneur for a decade and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
So for me, ultimate freedom is peace of mind above everything else. Just being able to find a sense of contentment and security in your life, no matter what the circumstances are. And that goes back to a lot of what we talked about, with respect to pivoting and finding the light. Having peace of mind is ultimate freedom for me.
I love that. Peace of mind, freedom. Folks, listen, I am so excited. I love doing this podcast. I love when I have guests on. And obviously, it's very, very special for me to be able to feature Sarah, who is quickly become a very important part of our firm. And like I said, hit the ground running. And for those of you who are, clients and connections out there, you're going to see a lot more of her and you're going to get to deal with her. Sarah, thanks for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Thanks, Corey. It's been really great being here.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. If you are interested in finding out more about my law firm, the services we provide to entrepreneurial and growing companies across industries all over the country, and my partner Brian Megan and I, and my amazing team, just head over to kupferlaw.com. That's kupferlaw.com. And if you want to follow more of my content, head over to my LinkedIn page where I post regularly. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.